Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. It's another episode of the Daily. Well, it's actually not another one. It's actually part 2 of Daily 560, where we're looking at Polt's fantastical Terran vs. Zerg opening. In part 1, I was really, honestly, just thrilled to see the cool way that Polt threw in a Reaper and now the Widow Mines, and now he's starting to step into the mid-game. Didn't spend a lot of money getting Banshees or Banshees with Cloak or teching up that path. Very lean build. Relied pretty much just on a single reactor and then the Barracks factory combo. So as we step into part number 2, what I want to look at is how the mid-game starts to emerge from the foundations he set up at the start. Damn. So here we have this nice transition. Starting to get medevacs one at a time. I think that this is a highly underrated technique, building medevacs one at a time. We don't need to do nothing but build reactor medevacs like crazy. And per usual, boom. Starting to add on the tanks. Now, one thing that's cool about this single medevac out of this single production starport is that we can take these Widow Mines that now really are not going to be needed very much for containment, and we can start to get in our opponent's face a little bit. We have our Viking being very active, and we have Hyun kind of having some overlords that are dying all over the place, having trouble controlling these watchtowers. Oops. And now I can just step right on in with just a little bit of 1-2 aggression. Now this might do a lot of damage, it might not. We don't have full control over that because it relies on our opponent making some mistakes. But back home we have complete control over what we're doing with our buildings. So that's why we see this. These upgrades finishing up, ready to blast off. We see Polt harassing around. Trying to find some window of opportunity. He's spotted a 4th base, which is quite early from Hyun, but I would say expectable, given the fact that there's not really been a lot of direct Heli and Banshee pressure. However, I want to note, ooh, look at this, I'm going to pause it right at 11 minutes, nice. In 180 seconds, 2-2 will be finished, which means that 2-2 is finishing right at 14 minutes, which means, bam! Right here, remember this time? What's happening at 14 minutes? Zerg has infestors, but he doesn't have hive tech. His hive may have been started already. It's not guaranteed that he's going for hive. And so we're still hitting this key timing. It doesn't matter that we went Widow Mine or went for bomber-style tank play or Heli and Banshee. Still striking right at 14 minutes. An essential time, a key time, day 9. Only because it rhymes. And then just general good solid mechanics are following through on Polt's end. Walling this end off with depots.
Upgrade complete.
Building all his goody goodness. Things are looking great. I'm actually going to pull back a little bit. Pull back just a little bit. Bam. Okay, cool. So, there's a term I use a lot that I realize I don't know if I've ever defined formally. Rounding out a composition is the term that I use a lot. And what I mean by that is that think of your ideal late game setup in terms of units and buildings. Let's do Protoss versus Zerg because I think that's a little more straightforward. A Protoss player wants to have Blink, a lot of big upgrades, more than one robo facility to produce Colossus 2 at a time, Templar tech with Storm, and a hell of a lot of gateways. I mean, it's not a super in-depth kind of thing, but, I mean, Blink with Charge and Templar and Colossus and a lot of Robos and a lot of gates and all the upgrades in the forges. You just imagine all the cool stuff that's out there. So, for instance, in Terran vs. Zerg, Thors would likely not be part of our ultimate endgame composition. if we're opening up bio, having a ton of factories, having like 9 factories is not part of our endgame composition. Having ghosts might be part of our endgame composition, but not necessarily. Maybe in our late term ideal. So rounding out is where you look at what your ideal is and say, what do I have? Okay, well, I want to get the rest of it, is essentially it. So if we opened up and we have a lot of our upgrades and barracks out, or if we have a lot of our upgrades and our factories out, we might want to round that out by getting a lot of our barracks. In this position, do we have left to round out? Adding on another 4 or 5 barracks and getting some additional factories to produce siege tanks. We would also want some additional tech labs in our composition. One of the final things we'd want to round out is getting extra starports for Vikings to be able to deal with Hive. And you can sort of think intuitively about where, about how we would round that out. Maybe we would begin pushing and adding on these starports. Maybe we would start by building more units to push more aggressively and delay rounding out. If you know the end goal of all the things you need, it can help you figure out the path that you want to take. If you wanted to, right now, I think the basic thing to consider in terms of rounding out is that we probably want some more factories and we probably want some more barracks. Do we want to get barracks first, or do we want to get factory first? This is a really basic question that we have in front of us. In a very Polt-esque fashion, Polt is a player who favors rounding out his composition first with additional factories. And actually not 1 factory. 2 factories tends to be the trademark norm in this matchup. Polt actually gets 3. Now why is that? Polt wants a lot of tanks. 6, 7 tanks. But this factory has been spending a lot of time producing mines in the early game. So he makes up for this by getting not 2, but 3 factories total.
This better be good.
Now, in terms of timing, I want you to note that as I speed this up, 14 minutes is the time we want to be attacking, right? 14 minutes. That is enough time for 1 tank to come out of each of these factories, maybe 2. So right now we have 2 tanks. We're about to have a 3rd tank, and then we can get 3, 4, 5, 6 tanks for our 14-minute push. And we'll literally see that all happen now. Still at 6 barracks, when ideally we'd want something more like, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still on 6 barracks, when ideally we want something more like 8, 9, 10. But, you know, rounding out with barracks a little later. Because basically Polt is saying, I started marine production quite early with those 4 racks, so I don't need those as much as I really do need these tanks. So we're going to see them go down. Here's another tank, and we're going to have 2, 3 extra tanks before I push. These sorts of things are actually a lot stronger because of the emergency thrusters. We can pull back, and of course, these pushes make even more sense if we opened up mines. This is not a mere in a vacuum play. Ooh, these are better because they have ignite afterburners, so let me do this. That is true, but again, coordinating with our opening. And a nice little spotter up there.
Ready for dust off.
So come on, build them. Come on. Come on, Polt. Come on.
This better be good.
Come on. Come on. Oh, you douchebag. Finally, there we go. Yeah, again, we have 4 tanks now. Ordinarily, if we had rounded out with our barracks first, and then rounded out with our factories, we would have 5 tanks in this attack. And now it looks like we're going to have more like 7. Hi. Great. So, while Polt is doing all his good old defendering, I'm going to speed this game up because there's really not that much more that's going to be going on in it. A lot of Mutalisks appear to be the transitionary choice of Hyun. 14-minute push begins to move out with 2-2 upgrades. Still sees the hives coming up. Going to begin making that push, doing that unload. And little after 14 minutes. Not as on point as I'd like. Still, 7 tanks, 61 Marines. And it's a mighty scary production capacity at the backside. Polt really loves his tanks. So we had a cool opening, and now we're just going to do a really brute force, brutal push, walled ourselves in. So we're taking damage from counterattack, but we're not hyper vulnerable to it. As this push is moving up here, we're not getting too trigger happy and blasting in with the medevacs. Nice. Despite Hyun having a fairly good angle on the attack, we have 2-2 upgrades and a lot of stuff. And when we replenish, we're doing it 3 tanks at a time. Makes for really difficult to deal with play. And Polt smartly pulls back, coordinates his attack to be able to cut off. This looks a lot like, let me just run from A to B. But the critical thing is that Polt is first going to the space in between the expansion and the reinforcement, and then he's attacking. If for some reason there was a expansion here, Polt would not necessarily cut down like this and then over like that. Instead, Polt would be much smarter to cut like this and then down like that to hit this bottom right expansion. Because again, we want to get in between. And then it kills everything done shortly thereafter uses. There's not really that much more to be said here. And the reason I say there's not that much more to be said is that I want to go into a second game. Oh, God. I don't know why HotS does that. Can you still hear me? Okay. It's so sad. It's so saddening. Scratching my nose a little bit. Feels very good on my nose. And as we hop into the next game, in the bottom left-hand corner, we have Polt, our hero. Oh, Polt. Oh. And in the bottom right, it's Hyun of the former TSL team. Okay, so Polt's doing his usual supply depot at the front, speeding it up. And yet we are still going to be admiring the way that Polt strings all these together, the way he coordinates, in particular with his scouting. So it's not the expand first that we saw last game. It's not the command center first. In fact, it's a refinery coming up. Would ordinarily go straight into double Hellion production, right? Almost always we would use this early refinery to build a factory. But this one, we're going to see the same basic idea, Reapers with some mines, and then into the mid-game. We're going to do it differently, so let's see how this specific opening coordinates resource-wise to get to the mid-game. It's about them resources. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. There it is. Reaper coming out right now. Scout advancing along in, so that way we strike when? Right around the time we'll see if one of his gas geysers is going down. So Reapers, very expensive on time. Takes 50 gas, which is reasonably expensive early on, but 50 minerals per 45 seconds of build time, really cheap on minerals. And you can tell when something's cheap on minerals because you just have a lot of minerals left over when building it. So Polt, step 1 of the build, get Reaper, and get Expansion.
Our SCVs are under attack.
This is a little bit different than what we saw last game, which was, aha, I see you have no Zergling speed, so a Reaper would be good right now. This is a, I'm going to go Reaper first because there's no way a Zerg can ever have speed right now. So first, checking Geyser 1. Checking Geyser 2. Excellent. No Zergling speed is going to be happening to us early. So, Polt steps out magnificently into the mid-game. And we shall see, indeed, Mr. Rallied SCV is going to have a new job in town. He's going to be building a factory. So one of the fun advantages to going Reaper first is that you can do this shiz. By the way, there's the factory. Bunker's not going down at the front. The bunker's going down here. Good stuff. Unlikely for actually queens to be out. So it's very easy for us to do a little bit of harassment damage. Marines being produced, why not Reapers? Because Reapers are actually just bad at general damage output, so we're just going to get ourselves some bunker bait. And then let's speed things up. Reactor going down, Widow Mine. Oh, it's almost done, and then there, and then right now it can be under construction. Still doing the usual harassment at the front, still going for a starport at the back. Not one Widow Mine, but maybe two. Or at least we would have been able to had we not been supply blocked so badly.
Add-on upgrade.
So great, getting the one Widow Mine out, a defensive tool, switching it up. You'll notice that there's no third command center as early as last time. So notice how resource-wise, Viking, because we are spending some gas on the Widow Mines. These Widow Mines are not as mineral intensive as Hellions, so we can still do this quite swift tech up the tech tree. Come on. There it is. We can do this swift sprint up the tech tree and still get a command center. I just want to know, I just want there to be a brief appreciation for the way that Polt was able to both go barracks first, really fast Reaper, and get a fast third command center, and get a fast starport with reactor. He was able to do all of that. It's very common to start off with an early expand, and then go early third, and then go fast starport, but it's really freaking hard to go barracks aggression first, and then go 3 command center, and finish our basic tech structure to get our starport factory stuffs going. All this is made possible because this is cheap on minerals, these are cheap on minerals, allowing us to get this thing and this thing. Oh, yes. This is great. And you can see up in the top tab something a little different coming out from Hyun. Hyun actually has a roach warren coming. We're not going to go into that too much yet, because obviously Polt can't see it, but I just want you to be aware at the very least that something different is going to be happening. So cool, we're still making these Widow Mines, so we have leftover minerals. What better than to build barracks with? Widow Mines heading up to the third base. Widow Mines stepping up into the mid-map. Widow Mines dealing some pain. Bro, 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 bro. More Widow Mines stepping on up. It's a really different kind of harassment. Getting these extra refineries up. How would Polt need to round out his composition? Well, he has a factory. He has these 3 barracks. Should he be going for tanks to round out his composition? Lifting this and landing this elsewhere? Should he be going barracks to round out his composition? Barracks would be if you wanted to attack more. Tanks would be if you wanted to defend more. But interestingly, double engineering bay going down after this construction of these barracks. Last game, Polt went for the double engineering bay before he went for all these barracks. Polt is actually gearing up to do more aggression early on, to get more units up early on. So we're just doing some nicely planted burrows. There's the Overseer. Will it be done in time? This one will. Picking off some cocoons. Go, Super Widow Mine. It's gonna be close.
Upgrade.
I didn't get there. That was fun. But still, we can use this one Reaper to pull units along our mining paths, Viking killing stuff off, Marine Marauder starting to increase in number, starting to get the tanks, getting the 1-1, and our Widow Mine. You can start to see what the goodness of the harass is. Look, we still have map control dominance just like we would with Heli and Banshee. It's a little different kind of map control dominance. Boink. And doink. That one was killed off. Ooh, you want to be aggressive, do you? The one thing that really kind of stinks about this opening is that we don't have good control over the creep spread. But everything else, looking good. We're going to have our 1-1 finished right in time with our combat shield. We won't quite be going for the 14-minute 2-2. It looks like we're going for something more like a 12-minute 1-1 push with not so many tanks. We're going to come back after this oh-so-short commercial break, and when we do, we're just going to finish this damn daily. Finish this game, we're going to take some questions. Cool.